Welcome to Underwire History. The year is 1486, a pivotal moment in English history. King Henry VII, the first Tudor monarch, has consolidated power after the Wars of the Roses. He seeks to reform and strengthen his government, appointing key officials to administer justice and govern the kingdom. One such appointment is that of John Morton, who becomes Lord Chancellor of England and Chief Justice of the Court of Chancery. Morton's role will be crucial in shaping English law and governance for decades to come. As a skilled lawyer and politician, he brings a deep understanding of the complexities of medieval England's social hierarchy and its institutions. However, his appointment also reflects King Henry VII's desire to assert control over the church and the nobility. The Lord Chancellor's position is both powerful and precarious, requiring Morton to navigate the delicate balance between royal authority and ecclesiastical influence. As John Morton accepts the role of Lord Chancellor, he faces a web of constraints. The king's desire for control over the church has led to tension with the nobility. The Lord Chancellor's position demands a balancing act between royal authority and ecclesiastical influence. Morton must navigate the complex relationships between monarch, nobles, and clergy to maintain stability. His appointment reflects the king's effort to assert dominance in governance and justice. However, this also limits Morton's autonomy as Chief Justice of the Court of Chancery. He will have to tread carefully to avoid alienating powerful factions or undermining the king's authority. The delicate balance between power and precarity sets the stage for Morton's tenure as Lord Chancellor. As he assumes office, Morton is acutely aware of the accumulated pressures on his position. The appointment of John Morton as Lord Chancellor in 1486 marked a pivotal moment in English history. King Henry VII's desire to consolidate power and control over the church led him to select Morton for this crucial role. Morton's experience as Chief Justice of the Court of Common Pleas made him an attractive candidate to oversee the complex relationships between monarch, nobles, and clergy. However, his appointment also underscored the king's intent to assert dominance in governance and justice through the office of Lord Chancellor. This strategic move would have far-reaching consequences for Morton, who must navigate the treacherous waters of royal politics and ecclesiastical influence. As he assumed office, Morton was keenly aware that his tenure as Lord Chancellor would be defined by the delicate balance between power and precarity. He faced a daunting challenge: to maintain stability while upholding the king's authority, all while navigating the competing interests of nobles and clergy. The intricacies of Morton's position were compounded by the need to balance the demands of the monarch with the requirements of justice and governance. This precarious equilibrium would be a defining feature of Morton's tenure as Lord Chancellor, influencing every decision he made and every action he took. John Morton's appointment as Lord Chancellor triggered a significant shift in the balance of power between the monarch and the nobility. Now heading the Court of Chancery, Morton oversaw a significant revamp of England's judicial system. This move not only consolidated Henry VII's grip on power, but also created new challenges for Morton as he navigated the complex relationships between the crown, nobles, and clergy. The appointment sent a clear signal that the monarch would no longer tolerate any significant challenge to its authority from the nobility or the church. In practice, this meant that Morton had to tread carefully in his dealings with both Henry VII's courtiers and the ecclesiastical hierarchy. Any misstep could lead to accusations of disloyalty or favoritism, jeopardizing not only his own position but also the stability of the entire system of governance. Morton's success in maintaining this precarious balance would be crucial in shaping the course of English history for decades to come. In this period of shifting power dynamics, John Morton's appointment as Lord Chancellor would have a lasting impact on the relationship between the monarch and the nobility. The office of Lord Chancellor was not only a symbol of royal authority, but also a powerful tool for maintaining control over the English judiciary. Morton's tenure as head of the Court of Chancery would significantly impact the evolution of English common law and long-term governance. lines, the appointment of John Morton as Lord Chancellor set in motion a series of events that would test the limits of his authority and the power of the monarch. Rumours began to circulate about Morton's supposed favouritism towards certain courtiers, with some nobles questioning his loyalty to Henry VII. Headed by Morton as its chief administrator, the Court of Chancery undertook a major reform of the English judicial system, only to encounter substantial resistance from both the clergy and the aristocracy. Morton's detractors accused him of attempting to consolidate too much power in the hands of the crown, while his supporters saw him as a necessary check on the excesses of the nobility. The debate over Morton's role in shaping English governance was not limited to the courtiers and clergy. It also had significant implications for the development of common law, with some jurists arguing that his reforms were too radical and others seeing them as long overdue. With tensions escalating between the crown and the nobility, Morton found himself increasingly isolated within the royal council, unable to rely on a clear majority in support of his policies or decisions. Despite these challenges, Morton persevered, convinced that his vision for a more efficient and effective system of governance was essential for maintaining stability and prosperity in England during this period of significant social change. Morton's leadership style, characterized by a firm but fair hand, earned him the respect of many within the royal administration, but it also sparked resentment among those who felt he was too quick to assert his authority or not willing to accommodate their interests. The office of Lord Chancellor held significant influence over the English judiciary, and Morton's appointment set in motion a series of events that would test the limits of his authority. Morton faced opposition from within the church, with some clergy members questioning the legitimacy of his reforms and fearing the erosion of their traditional privileges. Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey, a powerful nobleman and cousin to the king, emerged as one of Morton's most vocal critics, accusing him of attempting to consolidate too much power in the hands of the crown. The English nobility, concerned about the impact of Morton's reforms on their own influence and privilege, began to mobilize against his policies, with some even going so far as to question Henry VII's decision to appoint him Lord Chancellor. Morton persevered despite facing opposition from within the royal council, convinced that his vision for a more efficient and effective system of governance was essential for maintaining stability and prosperity in England during this period of significant social change. The institutional setup of the English judiciary at this time was complex, with multiple courts and jurisdictions competing for power and influence, creating an environment ripe for conflict and resistance to reform. Henry VII's decision to appoint Morton Lord Chancellor was motivated by a desire to consolidate royal authority and maintain stability in England after years of civil war and power struggles between the nobility. Morton's appointment marked a turning point in the development of English common law, as he sought to implement reforms that would strengthen the Crown's hold on power while also promoting justice and fairness within the judiciary. Morton's perseverance was tested by a series of high-profile trials that exposed the weaknesses of the English judicial system. The most notable of these was the trial of Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, who was accused of treason against Henry VII. Despite Morton's efforts to ensure a fair and impartial process, the trial was marred by allegations of perjury and corruption among the royal officials involved. This incident further eroded public confidence in the English judiciary and fueled opposition to Morton's reforms. The tensions between Morton and the nobility came to a head when Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey, led a delegation of nobles to petition Henry VII for Morton's removal as Lord Chancellor. In response, Morton submitted a detailed report outlining his achievements and the progress made towards reforming the English judiciary. However, this effort was ultimately unsuccessful, and Morton resigned from office in 1513, citing health reasons and personal circumstances that made it impossible for him to continue in his position. Morton's legacy as Lord Chancellor is complex and multifaceted, reflecting both his achievements in promoting justice and fairness within the English judiciary and his struggles with opposition from within the royal administration and among the nobility. Henry VII had appointed Sir Thomas Lovelace as a key advisor to Morton, tasked with overseeing the implementation of reforms within the English judicial system. However, Lovelace's own interests often conflicted with those of Morton, leading to tensions between the two men. The trial of Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, was also notable for its impact on the development of English common law. The case established the precedent that treason could be committed through words as well as actions, a concept that would have significant implications for future generations. Morton's efforts to reform the English judiciary were also hampered by his own reliance on a network of informants and spies within the royal administration. This created a culture of fear and mistrust among the nobility, who saw Morton as a power-hungry manipulator rather than a champion of justice. The opposition to Morton's reforms was not limited to the nobility alone. Many members of the clergy also opposed his efforts, seeing them as an attack on the privileges and powers of the Church in England. In 1513, Henry VIII ascended to the throne, bringing with him a new set of priorities and policies that would have significant implications for Morton's legacy as Lord Chancellor. Despite his resignation from office, Morton continued to play a behind-the-scenes role in shaping English policy until his death in 1525. The consequences of Morton's tenure as Lord Chancellor were far-reaching and multifaceted. The English judiciary was left reeling after the failed reforms, with many of its members disillusioned and demoralized by the experience. The tensions between Morton and the nobility had created a toxic atmosphere within the royal administration, where informants and spies were often pitted against each other in a struggle for power and influence. This culture of fear and mistrust would have lasting implications for the development of English common law, as judges and lawyers began to prioritize self-preservation over the pursuit of justice. The trial of Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, had also set a disturbing precedent that treason could be committed through words as well as actions. This concept would be used to silence dissenting voices in the years to come, as Henry VIII's own reign became increasingly tyrannical. In response to the fallout from Morton's tenure, the English government established a new council of inquiry to investigate allegations of corruption and misconduct within the judiciary. The council's findings were damning. Many of Morton's closest allies had been accused of embezzlement and other serious crimes. The consequences of these revelations were severe. Several high-ranking officials were dismissed or imprisoned, while others fled the country to avoid prosecution. Despite these efforts to reform the English judiciary, the damage to its reputation had already been done. In 1517, a group of prominent lawyers and judges petitioned Henry VIII for greater autonomy and independence from the royal administration. Their request was rejected, however, and instead led to a series of increasingly stringent controls on the judiciary's ability to operate independently. Thanks for listening to Underwire History. Look forward to seeing you next time.